Yeah, Alicia, I think Randy was having some difficulty getting tied in.
Hello, everybody.
Hi there, Tim.
Hi.
Hi, Tim.
Hello. You want to give it a few more minutes or?
Hey, I was just trying to pull up the November 18th minutes. And the link on that, on the agenda page, isn't pulling those up for me. Is that my problem?
No, I have the same problem.
Yeah, Tom just pointed out some of the links are broken. I'm not sure what happened. I'm looking into it.
Yeah, it was working before.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Looks like Bob Stokes is still traveling there.
Yes, I apologize. I'm about 2 miles from the house here. I'm working my way back through Marion, so I apologize. But I'll jump on my laptop when I get home.
So who are we waiting for now?
I assume we're waiting on Tom.
John Bender, is he on?
No.
No, I don't have John Bender or Tom.
Hello?
Hey, Tom.
Hey, sorry. John Bender's texting me. He's trying to get in. My apologies. I couldn't get in for a while there. Alicia, could you send a meeting link to John Bender?
Yeah, I just resent his.
Okay. How's everybody doing tonight?
That's great.
Yeah, not too bad.
Good deal. Have we started conversations on anything?
Not yet.
Okay.
We were waiting for the big cheese.
John?
Tom.
We were talking about you, Tom.
Oh, yeah. Like, where is he? I have to admit, I was in a hurry to get here, and I was driving down the street, and I literally driving down the street, and my daughter is on her tricycle in the street, riding to a friend's house, and I had to stop and get her, put her trike in my vehicle, and take her home, and explain to her why that's not such a good idea. Oh, my apologies. I just didn't want her to die.
Well, Tom, that life-saving measure there just prevents me from asking you, what time does a 5:30 p.m. meeting start?
Yeah, there you go. I get it. Was everybody able to use the iCompass software and agenda information?
Yeah, I was. I think there were some others that had trouble, but I was.
Well, I was until today. So I've clicked through the links a couple of times, but then today they're not working.
Really?
They were working still mid-morning. I was on them again mid-morning.
Yeah, I could get to the agenda, but I can't get to the last month's minutes or the section of the code or whatever that was.
Well, we kicked you out of the minutes, Craig.
Well, and
You're
that's,
not allowed to review them anymore.
I just clicked on the
Yeah.
minutes and it came up. So
I think
maybe-
Alicia might, I don't know if she made a change, Craig, but I was having trouble accessing them too, and I can get in now.
all right, yeah, I'm in.
There were some permission issues. Everyone should be able to access the links now.
Yeah,
Well, if it's any indication, this software makes everything in everybody's lives on the back end of this so much easier. So, so that is just nice to have. So I'm glad it's working for everybody now.
So we're ready to get started then?
Yeah, I think before we get started, we may want to introduce Alicia. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
I had a feeling you might put me on the spot. I'm Alicia. I work in the city manager's office as an administrative assistant. I joined the city at the end of September and was recently asked to start helping out with your guys' meetings to help streamline agendas, minutes, all of that. So be patient with me as I'm learning some of these things. Clearly, we've already had issues, but hopefully they're ironed out and we'll be good going forward.
And I just want to say how appreciative I am of Alicia stepping in and helping with this. I will note that I prepared the last minutes and that was not Alicia. I'm sure they'll be much better into the future. So anyway. With
Well,
Okay.
welcome. We're glad to have you.
So, anyway.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And if you've all looked at the minutes from November 18th, reviewed them, is there any additions, deletions, subtractions?
There should be one correction to the minutes. It was pointed out that Phil actually was in attendance, so he needs to be moved to the attendance.
and
Okay.
in section 3, I submitted fixed to the word NOTAM, but it got flipped. So instead of NATAM, it should be NOTAM, N-O-T-A-M.
You might want to explain that, why it's NOTAM. I mean, I know that you know, Craig, but it's everybody else does.
Notices to airmen and women, air people.
Thank you.
Yeah, be careful.
You have to say that too, Craig. You're legally obligated.
Yeah, I know.
Is there anything else on these minutes that need to be addressed?
It's a small point, but just to make sure that you're looking at the latest ones, in my discussion last time, it was Hughes that had alternatives to AWAS, and Hughes that seemed to be better, just more informed on the subject. And that was wrong in the original minutes, but that's the correct way.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. I motion that we pass these minutes with the changes that have been prescribed here.
Bender can second.
John Bender seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Those minutes are approved. Moving on to the second agenda item, the Lux Air report. Steve, you want to hop on here?
Yep. So what we got going on in the airport for operations, October was 584 operations, November was 540, and December was 446. It's winter, so things are slowing down, and we've had a couple of weeks where the entire week is just all fogged out, and so it's just how it is sometimes. We got word back from the FAA that they completed their airspace study, and they didn't have any objections to the widening to 60 feet. And as to what that means for the update on the AFD, I'm not sure yet. I haven't been able to get in touch with John from the FAA yet as to what that means, and he's the same contact that I need to find out more about if a NOTAM in the meantime is appropriate. So hopefully, I did recently get an email for him, so hopefully that's a better way to get in touch with him. And let's see. Two of the hangars that were damaged in the derecho, we recently got taken down. One was over on the Medco property, and the other was next to the FBO. And we still have some hangar doors that aren't usable. I know they've been ordered. I don't know when those are due to arrive or when the weather will be conducive to doing that work. And I also got a question about our VHF antenna, which was knocked down during the derecho. I tried to look up when that got fixed, but I don't have an exact date on it. It was within a few weeks. And so for the past few months, the radios have been fully operational.
Does anybody have any questions for Steve regarding aircraft operations that are happening right now? Nothing? Okay, we'll move on to the chairman's report. And I have something I'd like to talk about, and I spoke to Grant a little bit about this on the telephone. So before, give you a little history, before we took over in the original MAAC, we talked briefly about federal grant funding and basically NIPIAS funding. And, you know, that was a long time ago. I mean, it was it 5 years now? And I think some things have changed. And I guess my feeling on it is, you know, we're doing an economic impact study, but maybe we should be approaching this problem of funding from both ends. There's a new set of stoplights. I know Lon always used to joke about, you know, we need more stoplights so that we can increase the traveling time between here and Cedar Rapids. Well, now we have one up by Quick Star, right? And I'm sure some of the rules have changed in general since we first were formed. And I think that it would behoove us to look a little bit further into that instead of always, you know, reaching into our own pockets first. So I did a little bit of research here, and you can look this up. They actually have well, the federal government has a website for the FAA, and they actually have a server that's set up for just looking up grant history, federal grant history. So this is a file from 2019. It starts 2019, ends in 2019. And some of the figures here, I'll just point out a few of them that I found a little bit shocking. Mason City Municipal Airport. The town of Mason City has a population of 23,800. That's the census from 2017. 2017 census for Marion, Iowa was about 40,000. They received $300,000 to acquire snow removal equipment. Okay, that's one. Algona Municipal Airport, population 5,472, received $245,700 to reconstruct a runway. That's 1 year. Cherokee County Regional, the town of Cherokee, I didn't get the county's figures, but the town of Cherokee is 5,250. They received $773,796 to reconstruct a taxiway. The list goes on and on. I think that we should ask or find a way, you know, we've been talking a little bit about getting a consultant on board, but I think there's dollars out there that we should investigate how we can qualify for those monies a little bit further, because there's some big dollars out there that are getting thrown around. And I think it would be in our interest to at least keep pursuing that. I know that the rules would change a little bit as far as safety is concerned between DOT and FAA and federal, but we don't know until we try, and it's been 5 years. So I guess that's my report for today. And I would like to see city staff or whoever we do hire eventually as a consultant to look a little bit further into this. So that's my opinion. That's my report. Thank you.
Tim, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you know those funding sources, like where those dollars were coming from? Were they grants? Were they coming from the cities themselves, or do you know?
No, this is all federal grants. This is nothing to do with the city. The city didn't have any skin in this. That's all federal dollars.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Well, Lon and Tom, does the city have a grant writer?
Whoever draws the short straw. No, but we usually collaborate pretty well when there's a necessity or a desire for a grant. This might be something specialized. I'm sure Jane or someone, Jane's like, wait a minute, what? Have written those grants. Usually it's a collaborative effort, honestly. Lon, I don't know if you had any.
Yeah, the key to it is just eligibility for funding because the dollars are funded out of federal aviation fuel taxes that are collected. And so they're made available for airports that fall under what's commonly referred to, I think, as the NIPIAS funding stream or the FAA funding stream. And when you can qualify for that, you can receive dollars for projects of pretty significant scale. Iowa's does the same thing. DOT funding is funded by state aviation taxes, but usually only has millions of dollars available versus the federal level that has billions of dollars available. So what you can accomplish is pretty significantly different. And you'll see a lot of times that the projects that go into the DOT are ones that may have already gotten or are pending federal funding allocations. So as the airports get better at doing that, they actually layer funding from the two sources to even more significantly reduce local share on projects.
So what's the best way for us to get our eyes on it and be timely?
Well, the first thing would be to talk to someone who's got familiarity with the current criteria for what you have to do to qualify for the funding stream. Might again put Jane on the spot, but that's probably the FAA regional office out of Kansas City, Jane?
Yeah, that'd be correct. I would suggest talking to Jeff Dietering. He's the Iowa planner at the FAA in Kansas City.
I guess my point is that it's worth another look. I mean, I think we gave up on it when we first took over this this airport, but I think now it's worth reinvestigating and see if the rules did change and if it's favorable for us to possibly qualify.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how we operationalize your thoughts here, as far as
Right.
getting our eyes on it and getting somebody timely in writing it and getting those decisions made. So that's the nature of my questions here. It's just how do we operationalize your thoughts here?
Right.
Tim, do you know, like briefly, what kept us from going that route? Because I've been operating under the idea that that's just above our ability and we're just not going there.
There's a set at the time, the last time we looked at it, there was a set of criteria that we needed to meet. And the one that we were really having trouble with was there was a standard for ground-based travel time between our airport and the closest current NIPIAS airport. And Marion, the travel time between us and Cedar Rapids was not long enough for us to be able to qualify.
So that's why you keep putting in more stoplights?
There you go.
We've got one, we're closer right now. I think in time it could be reasonably close. To the original set of criteria, but how close were we, Lon, when you checked into it the first time? Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head, Tim. We were not that far outside. I mean, it was a matter of several minutes. I just don't remember exactly how many.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else on this subject, or you want to move on? Okay, so items for discussion and or action, capital improvement program, CIP discussion, approach beacon signage. Is that Tom or Mike?
I'm going to take that one. So the first one, the approach, I have RFP that we have used for previous projects. I don't know if the chair and a couple others want to get together and we have a small working group, but obviously I need some pilots that are more experts to help configure that RFP for what we actually want out there that we can then send out to the two companies that Greg used, and then maybe we send one to the FAA, even though that's a long ways out, just so we have three competitive companies that we look at, and then we would bring that back to the committee to then make a selection recommendation to city council.
Well, I'd be happy to look at that. Are we allowed to like go back to Hughes and ask them what we should be asking them for?
No, technically you need to kind of write what you think you want, and then they give us the proposal, and then we try and compare the proposals together. It's a qualification based, not a price based. So just because one is cheaper doesn't mean you have to necessarily go with.
Mike?
I would imagine based on the last meeting, you probably already selected who you want to go with, but we still need to give the other an opportunity based on the conversation. So,
Hey, Mike, in our municipal world, do we have the ability to issue what back in my working life, it was a request for responses where a potential customer would ask a bunch of questions and solicit answers from multiple vendors. Those answers then would be an input to the formulation of an RFP or RFQ that would then be subsequently redistributed to that same cadre of potential vendors. Is that a legal thing for us to do?
I would have to touch base with legal. I know Greg has already done a lot of that already with the two companies. So I feel like we probably have enough to at least get some numbers put together based on what we want to see out there. And again, it's based on qualifications. And then there's a negotiation once that company is picked on what we actually want. And that's where some of that dialogue occurs. And that's how we do most of our engineering projects is we meet back, and then we pick the company that we feel is most qualified. We sit down with them and say, okay, so in your scope, you had X, Y, and Z. We want Z, we want A, and you figure out a price for that.
I think in my experience doing this through multiple different contracts is I think having a way to value or weight the responses in the different categories, experience, price, who they're going to have on the project, figuring out how you value or how you weight those responses and plug them into your matrix. I think that's something that we would probably need to work on.
Yeah, and I actually have in the RFQ, one thing we won't do is based on price because it's qualification based, not price based. But yeah, I actually have that in there, and that's where I'll need some help of what are we going to use to weigh those different options, because this is not in my wheelhouse at all.
There's really only one option for an approach, and that's an RNAV approach. I mean, and I think that probably the minimums will be the minimums no matter who puts it together, but
right. And the thing that I was concerned about was more like when I talked to Jeppesen, they just figured it'd be a GPS approach. And when I talked to Hughes, it's like, well, we'll do both ends of the runway. And then thinking about it later, thought, well, actually, it's because Hughes brought up the helicopter thing. And that we hadn't talked at all about. And then there was the recategorization of the airspace. Like in the process of just learning, you get more and more details about what to ask for. So that the first people I talked to, I didn't ask any of those questions because I didn't know they were questions. And the second people is who brought all of that stuff up.
And in this case, with the information that you had with that conversation, I think we have enough information to put something together of what we're looking for. Now, we may have all the questions, but we should be able to pick a company, and then with that company, we can start the negotiations.
Yeah, since it's qualification based, that works really well because you can make the decision based on qualifications and then negotiate the money and and the action items or what it is, the parameters, and all at the same time, and you've already chosen them based on qualifications.
Correct.
So it's basically what we're looking for is like an RNAV approach on both ends of the runway, or an RNAV approach to one side of the runway with a circle of land option to the other runway.
Yeah,
right?
so I need that in non-airport speak that we can put in there.
Well,
That's as good as it gets.
That's the challenge is we actually don't want you to understand it at all. We need the people we're talking to be able to understand it.
You got to remember
if you can route that document around or whatever, you know, we can look at it and make some suggestions or whatever.
Okay.
Hey, Bonnie, is that how you see it? Is that basically how you see it? Basically, RNAV to both sides, and then a circle. If we can't get, because of obstruction, we can't get to one runway, and then a circle of land option.
That's been my understanding all along, that it would be an RNAV. And the issue, my understanding is 3.5 because of the proximity to Cedar Rapids airspace, blah, blah, blah. But that's something that an expert will have to figure out. But yes, an RNAV, both sides, if not available, then circle to the other runway.
Right.
For non-airport people, that just means you do an approach to one runway, the minimums are higher, which means then you come out of the clouds and you circle to the opposite runway, if that makes any more sense.
And just FYI, when I was talking to Hughes, he was looking at our environment. He was fully aware of where Cedar Rapids was, where the towers are. He was telling me all of that stuff, and I somehow misplaced the PDF that he sent to me that showed all of the things with kind of a tentative overlay on it of an approach. Point being, there are some assumptions we might be making about what they can or can't do. And I think we just need to throw out everything that we want and let them tell us what can or can't be done.
Yep, I would agree with that.
And I agree with that also, Craig.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Tim, Craig, do you want Bonnie on that too, that I send that to, or how do you want to do
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Just a question as it relates to developing the scope, Jane. Is this something that, I mean, that you or if we reached out to HDR or an aeronautical consultant group, they say, yeah, this is how you do it, and had somebody help us just develop the RFP for that? I mean, instead of trying to recreate the wheel.
I think your pilots will be a big help on that.
Okay.
I feel like that will probably be good enough, and that'll work. You know, you probably could go and get a consultant to help you out, but I think what you've got planned sounds like it would work to me.
Hey, Mike, I think the RFQ can be very open-ended.
Yeah.
Excuse the term, high altitude, look at what we want, okay? So, and then let them submit all their qualifications. And then you pick the best person, the best firm, and then you sit down and actually do the scope schedule fee once you feel comfortable that these guys have the personnel. But the RFQ does not have to be really detailed. You just got to tell them what you want.
Yep.
And not spend a whole bunch. I don't know, Jane could jump into that too, as many RFPs that we have responded to over the years. You know, and they would give you exactly what Craig already saw, that these people really know what they're doing and will give us work together to get the scope prepared. So
yeah. So I'll send you guys one that's obviously going to be regarding a street project. So here we're talking about planes, so it's a little bit different. So we'll have to dive into it, but it'll be a good.
We're just looking at roads in the sky, so that's the only difference.
Right.
Yeah, replace everywhere that it says stop sign with air traffic control or something, and that should do it.
I'll probably
Yeah,
send,
crosswalks and yeah, it should be easy.
I'll send you a roundabout one, no stop signs.
Oh, geez. That would be, well, next we'll come up with the round runway, but we'll get into that later. So,
There is one.
So that's, so I'll send that out and we can get working on that on the approach. On the
Okay.
Jane has looked into it and possibly applying for the emergency DOT funding. The issue is we have to have city property to put it on. And currently there's nowhere that is city property that is right next to the airport that we can put that other than possibly on top of the police station. So just wanted to get thoughts.
On top of what? I missed that.
Station.
what?
The police station, he said.
Oh, the police station. Okay, I'm sorry. Couldn't hear that.
It seems like that's
It might be a
pretty
little
far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jane did look into it and it is within the parameters. I think it's supposed to be within 5,000 feet. But again, I don't know if that's necessarily where we want it because it is so far away.
I don't know. People that use it would be, they'd be making a hard left if they were coming from the north, right when they got there. I mean, it seems weird to me, but.
It could be weird, but there are airports where it's not right next to the runway, and that would be depicted on the AFD. So it should be available to pilots.
Is there a possibility of putting it on a tip pole next to like the trans closure, or is that too close to the runway?
Oh, you're on mute, Jane.
Sorry. Yeah, that would probably be too close to the runway. It would penetrate one of the imaginary surfaces and wouldn't work.
Okay.
So the other possibility too is trying to get some kind of lease to put it on top of a structure out there on the airport property. So that's something we can work through as well. It's just until we have that, we can't apply for that DOT emergency funding because it has to be placed on city property in order to apply for it.
Okay.
Mike, do we have to own it or just have control of it?
I'll have to defer to Jane.
I believe it has to be city owned.
Okay. So we could always, if the PD site's not an option, we could always visit with Medco too, although Tom would probably get a little heartburn about doing a property transfer for, 5x5 parcel big enough to put the beacon on.
Mhm.
Think of that as a plat of survey, right?
Yeah.
Thanks. It gets better. Yeah. I am at my bar.
So I know it's important because we're supposed to have it by having runway lights, and obviously it hasn't been operational, but we're kind of at a spot where we can't apply for funding because we don't have a spot to stick it. So looking for some ideas from some pilots here.
We'll be able to see where it is. I mean, it's going to be charted.
Right.
And it'll be weird, but it's not like you fly to the beacon and then drop the gear and land.
It gets you in the vicinity of the airport. It directs you where you're coming to. If you look at Cedar Rapids, their beacon is quite a ways south of the runway, actually. And that's all depicted on the charts. So
I think if the police station, if that's the closest property and it's like a no-brainer in terms of Like if that can be done there and we can get funding if we do it there and it's well within the radius, and I mean, that just seems like if it's a legit place to put it, why not put it there?
Yeah, I would agree with that, other than, you know, is the city's going to maintain it there? Is that what we're looking at? I mean, somebody's going to have to maintain it. And
police
usually
chief
the
agreed to go
FBO,
out- the police chief has agreed to go out and shovel the snow off it.
I bet.
Obviously, we'd have to do some checking to make sure that it has power and stuff like that. I don't know all those details, so.
I'm assuming it could be moved too. I mean, if we acquire ground or get something to put it on site.
On top of the legacy thing would be perfect.
Okay, so do you guys want me to look into putting it on top of the police station?
I'd
We
be fine
need
with
to
that.
put that in a motion.
I don't know that we need a motion, do we?
Well, there's a lot of variables, right? Before you can even place it, you have to find out if you have power. I mean, if you get power up there.
Yeah, I mean, I just need direction. If that's an acceptable location, I can start the process of looking into it to see if it's gonna work. It's not necessarily gonna work, but you want to spend time looking into it.
Fine with me.
Yep, sounds good.
It's fine with me.
Sounds good.
Yep, I'll set up a date with Jane and we'll see what we need up on top of the roof of the police station. And then the other one is regarding signage and fence out there. And we've kind of talked about, you know, the plan of removing some driveways and making one main driveway. Until we change the lease agreement, is there a feeling that we need to just put something out there today to at least show that we're trying to block it? Do we put out signs that say, you know, no unauthorized people past this point to try and keep vehicles off of the runway? Do we have a short-term fix and a long-term fix for that before we're able to actually do the full-blown parking lot and new driveway? As a stopgap, I'm looking for some direction there. And we do have signs that are ordered for the visibility constraint that have been ordered from Prison Industries. So once we get those, we will put those out there and we'll work with Lex there to make sure they're put at a proper height and location so that they're not taken out or take something else out.
I guess I would say that something's better than nothing right now. I mean, I would like to see some improvements on the safety side of signage immediately if we could. I mean, I understand that it's not going to be the full blown deal, but it'd be nice if we had something.
So even something entering the tarmac that says no unauthorized vehicles past this point or something for now, and then hopefully stop everybody, but it's something out there.
I would say so, but
Is there any kind of physical barrier? I know there was like a phone pole or railroad ties or something that kept people from easily getting out onto the ramp.
There is on the north side between it was kind of an access point during construction.
Mm-hmm.
Alongside of the north side of that area, the power poles are back out there. But we're talking more, you know, coming from basically the volleyball area or the FBO and driving into the runway thinking that it's just a driveway back there. So at least there's kind of just one main point there where it necks down a little bit that we could put some signs up.
What would be really nice, honestly, would be some paint. So delineate non-movement area to a movement area. Like they have at bigger airports. I mean, actually paint would probably work better than signs.
Well, that would work for pilots, Tim, but I don't know about non-pilots.
Well, I mean, even if you put paint on the ground, leaving the FBO heading south that just said, you know, no unauthorized vehicles past this point.
Okay.
You know, something like that would be better than a sign, just because the signs out there are dinky and you can't really put them on anything that's elevated because it could clip a wing. I don't know. Unless you put signs, it would be tough with signs.
My experience being in the airports, that's how we always did it. There were no signs.
Just paint. Yeah.
Just paint.
Yeah.
Paint and guys with guns.
So the paint obviously wouldn't happen until it warms up because we have to have ground temperatures high enough to actually get the paint to stick.
Snow's an issue.
So as long as you guys are willing to wait till the spring, I can work with Jane to figure out what kind of paint symbols or lettering we can put down.
You know, right now is not really a big problem with cars out there. I mean, the other people that are coming out there that are transient individuals, it's not happening right now. It usually happens when the volleyball starts up and that sort of thing, or we have events out there in the summer. But you know, right now it's just basically pilots out there that know better. So I'd be fine with waiting too, I guess. But
Yeah, it looks like you've got just like south of the FBO, and there might be another point coming on that eastern entrance. Well, off the highway. There's also one over by the volleyball place.
And there we could probably put up signs because there should just be vehicle traffic there. I don't think you're driving
Yeah.
there.
A lot of the problem is the volleyball court is not marked well, so they end up driving through the airport looking for how to get to the volleyball court. But so they, yeah.
I don't think
It
that
almost seems like something that just says, you know, Marion Airport, authorized vehicles only or something.
Yeah.
Scare enough people away from there. And I would think the main thing would be south of the FBO, just for somebody visiting, that they don't get turned around and head that way. But I also like some kind of double yellow line or something that makes it clear that you should think twice before you cross. And again, all this is changing. So.
well, and you know what, honestly, Craig, is that most airports before you enter the tarmac would have blue lights sticking up, you know, right next to the tarmac, that kind of delineates all that, plus paint. So, you know, we don't have any of that until you get past the tarmac and you're heading into the actual runway environment. You know, there's nothing. So that's right. Part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what makes it even more difficult right now is that we got rid of the big yellow cones. Now we just have those tiny sticks that come up in it. You know, during the day, you can't really even see the lights like you did before with the big yellow cones. So, you know, if it's at night, people know it's a runway, but during the day, I mean, you could mistake it easily for just a regular road.
Okay. Well, I think I have enough for at least a stopgap until we get farther along with doing something on private property. So.
Okay. Moving on to chapter 177 discussion, Marion Municipal Airport Committee. Bob, is that yours? Are you the one that wanted to talk about that, Bob?
Yes, but it really came from discussion we had last time, and then Grant actually reached out to me. We had a phone conversation, and then he was able to send it to me, and I just thought it would be good. We're entering into a new year. I just thought it'd be good to review it. We had some discussion last time about what is our role in this and in this grand scheme of things. So what are we supposed to be doing? And I think just reviewing this document kind of helps provide that guidance, at least for me. The first thing that jumped out at me was the term limits, which in this document states that we're on for 4 years, which I think is a little too much in my opinion, just my opinion. I think the 3 years that we have is probably good. That's a long enough obligation. But looking through 17707, item number 4, monitor the obligations of both parties as outlined in the lease agreement between the City of Marion and the fixed-based operator, and advise the parties of any discrepancies, needed changes, so on and so forth. I've never seen the lease, so one of our responsibilities is to make sure that we're monitoring any discrepancies or changes. I don't know how we can do that if I've never seen it. I don't know if any of you have. Number 5, recommend to the council the parties to the airport lease rules and regulations governing the airport operations not otherwise covered in the airport lease. Again, it gets back to the lease. And then number 10, we've already touched on it, exploring potential grant opportunities and furthering airport development. So those are just 4 of my takeaways on the document. And I just didn't know if any of you had ever reviewed it, because that was the first time I had seen it. So I appreciate Grant sending that to me so that I could review it.
Well, I've seen the lease. I asked for it when I signed on, but if there's people that don't have it, we ought to make sure that they do.
Yeah, I have seen an old copy of the lease. I don't know if there's a newer version or not.
There were revisions to it. I know that what I have is a document plus some kind of an addendum to it.
Lon, is it a 10-year lease? I think I saw a really early draft, which is probably more than half over, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be about halfway through.
So Tim, that's all I was asking for, is for us to just refresh what our responsibilities and duties are as a committee. That was all. So
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So maybe we should get a copy of the lease again and review it as a group, and maybe we would have more clarity as to what our responsibilities are. Is that possible, Tom, to get another copy to everybody?
Yeah, I just put it down.
Thank you.
I'll put it on the next agenda for review and consideration. There's questions.
Okay, moving on to Airport Zoning Board of Adjustment. I assume that's Tom.
Oh yeah, speaking of committee, so we need another committee. Everybody's excited, I'm sure. So similar to the zoning board of adjustment that provides for variances or special exceptions or review of the zoning administrator under the general city code, zoning section of the code. And because the airport is a little bit of a different animal and ours is also joint jurisdictional, the ordinance outlines the necessity for a specific airport board of adjustment. Within that, it also outlines the membership of that. And it provides that there's 2 members from the county, and the county is currently working on putting their members together. 2 members from the city. The county is ahead of me. I have not solicited this, but we need 2 members that actually live in the city. They would be appointed by the council. And then this committee also has the ability to appoint a member to the zoning board of adjustment. So I think we talked about this about 6 months or maybe even a year ago. I was looking through the ordinance. I don't know that there's anything that says somebody from the committee can't be on it. But if that's not something that's provided for, that's a consideration, unless you guys, can think of somebody that is very active at the airport and is a pilot or has some expertise that would provide that type of review process at a point when the zoning board would be reviewing a potential variance. The reason, so that I would try to think of somebody that that would be good for that position. I can send out the role and responsibilities. It's right in the airport overlay ordinance. You can look it up on the city webpage as well, if you want to know a little bit more about it. But I would like to get someone appointed and have this board created just to get it established, and I'll tell you why. The 2 big things that you'll find that this board will review will be a variance. If someone wants to build a structure that would penetrate one of the imaginary surfaces, as Jane was talking about earlier, that they would need to have a variance, and that variance would be reviewed by the zoning board of adjustment and either approved or denied. So having somebody with really good knowledge of flight and concerns with something that would potentially vary from the code. Sorry if you can hear my children in the background. So that's why I think it's important to have someone has some knowledge of flight and such. The other item that they would be reviewing, and since the derecho, this has come up within the city, but also would affect the airport, in the event that a non-conforming structure was removed, destroyed, the ability to rebuild it comes under review by the zoning board of adjustment, the airport zoning board of adjustment. So for instance, and the next item on the agenda is related to it's called the iHeart Radio Tower on there. That's just what I and the individuals that have been talking about it have called it. It's one of the towers north of the airport and east of Highway 13 came down in the derecho. 300-foot plus tower collapsed. And they're well within the horizontal surface by a couple hundred feet. So when that came down, internally we had a very distinct conversation that, well, those are all, they'd be considered legal non-conforming use, and I've never heard of one of those falling down, and I can't imagine that'll ever be an issue. And then 6 months later, one of them fell down, and we were trying to determine what now. I mean, pretty hard to approve a variance for something that's 250 feet within the horizontal surface. Called the state. The state had never had to deal with a tower falling in a horizontal surface, so they didn't provide much help. However, when I spoke to the tower company, all of those towers are actually connected underground, and they operate as one facility. And so one way to actually be able to reestablish a non-conforming use which has been destroyed is to indicate that the value of the structure is less than, and I'm drawing a blank on what the percentage is within the airport overlay zone. But if it's less than a certain value of the entire structure, it can be rebuilt. And so I'm awaiting the value statement, but they're saying that reconstruction shouldn't be a problem because it was the value of the entire system is X and this was Y, and it's much less than the percentage necessary for that. So we did not have to proceed to a variance for the reconstruction of the tower if the numbers come back correctly. But when we first started this about 3 months ago, it was a significant question about how we were going to proceed, and we didn't have that board in place. So that was a very long story, covered 2 agenda items. But so it's just important that we get that board in place so that if someone does have something, we're not putting them out 6 months to get it developed in place. So I honestly don't, our zoning board meets monthly, but we only meet for the city. We only meet probably maybe 6-7 times a year. So it's a board that it's going to be very difficult to keep them engaged, I will say. So if we had somebody that was very close to the committee, at Lynn County, I had noted that it'd be good, even if their board of adjustment members could be members of the airport board of adjustment, it might be good. So that might be something I draw on from the city, since they have a very good working knowledge of how a zoning board of adjustment works, that they actually have a member of the standing city committee to be a part of the airport one as well. So anyway, you guys.
Yeah, Tom, just some data on the towers. The one that fell was about 355 feet tall. It was self-supporting. The other 2 towers, let me jump back a little bit. All 3 towers were phased to give a pattern toward Cedar Rapids, a maximum, what they call emission pattern toward Cedar Rapids and the community. The tower that fell was a self-supporting tower from, I believe 1939 or so.
Wow.
And the two towers that are currently there are 425 feet tall. Now there might be, I don't know if there'd be a problem or not with a new tower if they decide to put a guide tower up there that is the same height as the other 2 current towers. I guess we'd have to look at the overlays and see if that would violate anything.
Oh, it will. I mean, it's 150 foot right there. So, I mean, it certainly penetrates the imaginary surface, horizontal surface to be exact, I believe. But because it's considered a part of the overall system, they would be allowed to, and the value is less than, I think it's 50% or 65%, it's either 50 or 65%, they would have the ability to rebuild. So
yeah, most of those are 50%, most of them.
Yeah, there, I can tell you real quick.
Yeah, wouldn't you think they were kind of grandfathered in to have their existing towers the way they were?
Yeah, they would be. And even, but under a grandfathering clause, if it is destroyed among a certain percentage, then they have to go away. But it's not the situation right now. So that's,
yeah, is Tower Service doing that? Do you know?
Vertical company called Vertical Bridge Development LLC is a wireless communication industry, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's called Vertical Bridge. And I've got like some of the.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Tower Service. They are in Marion, and they do a lot of cell towers and other towers. Yeah, the FCC has been kind of on WMT's case to get that new tower up as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's more to it than what I've just described. they're diligently working to get this accomplished. They did have to go back through and get FAA approval as well. But I do know that some of the communications that they provide are part of the emergency system of some sort. Or something. They were mentioning that.
Tom, are you looking for like a volunteer from this group, or are you just asking for help finding somebody that's associated with flying? Is that,
Yeah, I mean, if there was a volunteer from the group, that would be good. I would want to make sure that that is something that is able to be accomplished. I know sometimes they don't like to have members of the board be a part of the governing body. So I don't really have 100% recommendation on that, but if you know of somebody with regard to that, that has some interest in it, that'd be good too. So I think Mike Goldberg had stated a desire or thought on this at one point in time, but maybe I'm incorrect. You remember?
You're on mute, Mike.
My memory just doesn't recall that, Tom.
Okay, all right. So.
Is that a 5-member board? Is that
Yes.
what it's supposed to be?
Yep.
Odd number.
Yep.
Yeah, well, as I recall, I had volunteered to be a member, but if someone else wants to do that, or you have what you think is a better choice,
I
you
move.
won't hurt my feeling.
I think the nomination should cease.
There you go. Lon, you don't know of anything that would preclude a member of this committee, since it's a recommending body, from being a part of that board, do you?
No, there shouldn't be anything that would preclude one of these members from being able to be in that. It would just be, if there was something in the rules of that body that specified what their membership should have to be. But it's a joint jurisdictional body between us and Lynn County.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Phil, a vote of this committee would put you on that really quickly.
Too quickly, huh?
Motion.
I'll second that.
All right. The AZBA. Pay attention, Alicia. All right. Very good. So the other thing I was just gonna, as it relates to that tower, I just wanted to, I was just curious if there was concern with anyone on that, the rebuild. It's been there for ever and ever. I just didn't want it to be a surprise to anybody. The ordinance does establish it was 75%. So if it's destroyed beyond 75%, they would not be able to be rebuilt. In this instance, they're telling me that it's not even close. So they're just getting me some valuations to provide for that. If you want me to share that with the group at the next meeting, I can.
Yeah, that'd be great. The thing is that we already had an approach that was surveyed and constructed and everything. It just never was published. So, and that was with the towers out there. So I don't see a problem. That would be the only issue, would be having them work around that as an approach. But if they were there before, I don't see a problem. Okay, anybody got anything else? Okay, with that, we'll adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tom,
Good night.
everybody.
Night.
Night.
Good night.